You're very welcome. It's good to see you again. Now, please.
Thank you.
Have a seat. It's great to see you again. The song, My Time Flies, dedicated to Jimmy. Now, why?
Jimmy was a very close friend of Nicky, who I work with, and we were working on this track, which had a very sort of Beatles feel to it, and Jimmy Faulkner was a very big Beatles fan, so we decided to dedicate the song to him, and also his friend there, Pat Farrell, played the solo, and the first time for me actually to have a guitar solo in a song, so it was it all sort of fell into place. Yeah.
You occasionally do things that are not typical of what you generally do. For example, I dwelt in Marble Halls.
Yes.
Another sort of adventure out of your genre. 70 million albums.
Yes.
I mean, it's a massive achievement.
Yes, it is. Yes.
The question of the difference between success and fame, because you enjoy both, but you're happy with one, but not so happy with the other.
I always say that success and fame are two different things completely, and with the music, it's now 20 years since, you know, the success of Watermark, and I felt that the music itself was what sold, you know, and it was a case of the success, you know, was focused on the music for me. So in that regard, I've always been comfortable with that the focus hasn't always just been on my life, that it's always on the music.
20 years is a long time to be at the top. I mean, your music keeps on selling all around the world. Looking back at those 20 years, are there particular highlights, first of all, and then maybe the odd lowlight?
There's quite a few highlights, you know, with the success, again, with Orinoco. Introducing the music worldwide was just so wonderful a moment for me. And I'd have to say, performing in the Oscars was quite a big highlight for me as well. The downside for me would be, as far as, I suppose, these ongoing stories with stalkers that I get, that is something that I've had to live with. And I
mean, is it an ongoing thing? When one stalker is dealt with, is it automatically that he is replaced pretty immediately by another?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. So it's a case of you take precautions, but I cannot live my life sort of locked behind closed doors. I have to sort of travel, I have to work, I perform. So it's something that you deal with, but you try to sort of put to one side as well.
Yeah. In dealing with stalkers, I mean, what do you do when they're identified to you? Do you ask yourself, what is it about me? Why me? Or is it that every sort of famous female has her share of these kind of people?
It's a fixation that a person sort of has on another person, and I find it's a very sad place for them to be, and they need help. But unfortunately for me as well, it can lead to death threats, and it can lead to sort of where you fear for your life as such. So you have to kind of be careful, you know, what you do. So.
But is it a kind of, in your view, a delusional thing that because of your music, which is quite ethereal a lot of the time, quite otherworldly, do you think that they believe that you can, I mean, you're a musician and composer, that's what you are. You have a spiritual dimension, but do you think that they believe that you can bring something into their lives in addition to what your music brings in?
It can vary for so many different people. It's a fixation they have, and it could be to do with that. It has to do with that they're in a very unhappy place in their life, and some of them actually need to get help as such. And sometimes the support isn't there, you know. So I sympathize with them, but I have to sort of then be careful as far as my own security as well.
Yeah. Do you have pilgrims at your gate? I mean, I often walk past your gate with my dogs on a Sunday morning, or past Bono's gate, which is just a stone's throw away, and there are invariably people there taking photographs. You know, there's me up against Bono's gate, that sort of thing. Do you get that?
Have you been there?
I quickly pass. I wave at the security camera. I wave at the security camera. Morning, Bono. But do you get that kind of thing?
Yes. You get
That's
people.
okay.
That is fine. When people come along to take a photograph outside the grounds, and you know, they take, you know, they capture a moment for themselves. They've been there to Ireland and they visit, I'd say, a few places, and that's absolutely fine.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You are characterised in the press as reclusive, but you say far from it, that you're actually out and about an awful lot.
It's like for the last 6 months, I've just been traveling around the world since like September. You know, when I'm at home, I would be in the studio at times. I travel quite a bit as well with my work or, you know, with leisure.
When there's a new album out, you'd be travelling for what, half a year?
Well,
maybe?
I've just come back from Salzburg and from London, and prior to that in New York and Japan, and so I've been on a non-stop sort of travel.
There's a particular image associated with you, and can you, with a few deft brushes of the hair and a pair of shades and a pair of jeans, sort of become someone who's not Enya and walk down a street in New York or in Tokyo?
You can, so long as, you know, if you go along with a huge entourage and come out of a car wearing sunglasses, yes, you're going to be recognized. But there are times where, if you're quite discreet, you can actually get around, you know, certain cities without being noticed, yeah.
I mentioned highlights. You said the Oscars, certainly, and bringing Orinoco Flow to a world audience. But you also met one of your idols, Sir Paul McCartney. You mentioned the Beatles earlier as well.
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, you obviously knew who he was. Did he know who you were?
He did.
Tell us about the encounter.
Well, it was for the Oscars, they had us all performing one after another. Sometimes, you know, they have it that there is each song that it's actually quite isolated from each other, but we were all performing at the same time on stage. So Sting had sung his song first, and then I had sung, and it was then Paul McCartney. Sir Paul McCartney, and then it was Randy Newman, who I'm a big fan of, and Faith Hill. So it was so wonderful to meet, because I was a big fan of Sting as well with the Police. So to meet with them all, and they knew my music, and we admire each other's works.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the inspiration for your songs. As I say, your songs have a spiritual dimension and an ethereal quality, but you also have to seek out that inspiration somewhere. What do you do to kind of get in touch with your muse? Do you go to Donegal?
It's everything. It's from my travels now for the last 6 months. It's from meeting people. It's different cultures. It can be landscapes. There's so many inspirations that are there, but I'm not so aware of them till I go into the studio, because there's only one place that I will work, and that's in the studio, not in my home in the castle. And I just love to sit, and it's a very solitude moment writing music, but I just love to sort of sit there and sort of see what will evolve. What
Are
is
you disciplined? Do you say, I will work from 10 until 3 or whatever it is?
I am, yeah. I just sort of feel it's important. I still am a very slow writer, composer, so I feel I have to sort of set times where I will work for, say, a month. And maybe within that month I mightn't have written anything, but I feel it's a day closer to finding that melody.
Well, you will no doubt find many more melodies.
You're very kind.
In the meantime, the current album is out. Do you have any, you know, slight regrets about, your albums are huge all over the world, and sometimes, you know, that you're like the prophet in his own land, or a bit overlooked. Do you feel sensitive about that, or are you happy that you can achieve a normality in Ireland that maybe wouldn't be possible if
That's a good question. I always feel I come home to Ireland, you know, so at the moment, maybe that is the attraction to it, you know, that here you're sort of grounded more, you know, brought back to sort of, you know, where you were brought up. And so it's, you know, 1 minute you're in New York, like you said, or in Tokyo, and doing very big shows and talking to so many people, and then you're back to, you know, what you know and where you were brought up. So you can, you know, I think that can be a good thing as well.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show. It's an occasional thing you and I do, but
yes,
it's always
is.
lovely to have you. Thank you, Enya, very much for joining us on the show tonight.
Thank you so much.
And Enya's current album, And Winter Came, is out now, and it's a pretty good album for the weather we've been living through in the last few days. All right, Enya, once again, thank you. Now,